This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro, and today I want to answer a question that keeps coming up from viewers, which is related to guys that have read my book and watched my videos, and they're having a hard time identifying some of the patterns or finding some of the patterns. So I want to help with that today in terms of finding screens or showing you ways that you could run some screens. I use a program TC2000 I'll go into in a minute, but I think what you can do this in any program, and you don't have to use overly sophisticated approaches. But I think the key thing to understand is if you use a really tight screen, it's going to save you time, but you're going to miss a lot of stocks. And I talk about this a little bit later in the video as I go through. But if you do a loose screen where you have a lot of stocks passing, it takes a lot of time, but you're not going to miss any. So it's sort of a fine line there. Now, when I look at screens for me, I try and do things that allow me the ability to reduce the list that won't necessarily reduce the number of stocks, not making the technical criteria tighter. I'd rather use a volume screen or something like that to reduce and say, okay, if a stock has this much average volume per day, that's my starting point. Then I've reduced the list as a starting point, or market cap, or average true range, whatever. So a lot of these things are discussed in this video, and I try and go into some detail about how to go about finding names. Now, I do provide ideas because I look at so many stocks on my subscription through Rabil Stock Research. I'm trying to generate ideas that I think are very close to clicking in or triggering that meet the criteria that I talk about in my book and my videos. But we are also talking about doing something on the channel that might be on a lesser scale, not as much information as I provide on my research business on Rabil Stock Research, but it might help you at least maybe save you some time in terms of identifying some stocks that are meeting the criteria from the book. So stay tuned for that. But let me go ahead and get into this discussion on what types of screens and what things I'd be looking for. So I want to start out and just give you this basic premise, number one, which is the wide range bar, which is this big green bar here. Now, and here's a big green bar here as well. And what I'm pointing out is if we get a big green bar after a long sideways period, that's very, very bullish and usually the start of something to the upside. If we get a run to the upside and a stock has made a pretty decent move with uninterrupted, and then we get a big green bar, we should be thinking that's more of the end of the move. And that's not a bad spot maybe on this bar or the following bar to consider to be a seller. So that's sort of a basic premise that I want you to keep in mind. And so one thing you can do is go looking for these big green bars. And what I like to do, let me just show you. So this is TC2000. There is a link in below in the comment area, or not in the comment area, but in the description, where if you want to try this out, you can do it through my link as on a discount. But what I wanted to say here is that I do like this for screening. I usually, if I'm going to go through and look at a lot of stocks or do screens, I'll usually do it on TC2000, and I run it on a 15-minute delay because when I'm doing it, I'm not typically looking for something this second. I'm not trading intraday. I'm looking for patterns that have some real potential. And so I want to show you something. So I run this low ADX 1414 below 20. And you can see down there, that's the title. And then I do a volume screen. You can do like an ADX or an ATR screen if you want. You could do a market cap screen to reduce the list. But I like to look at a lot of names. There's 400 stocks passing this, but what I do to save myself time is I sort it by percent change. So the stocks that are having the biggest days are going to show up at the start of the list. So I don't have to go through all 400. If it's a mild day for the market, there's only going to be maybe, out of the 400, maybe there's 50 that are having a really good day, and I can go look at that. So every day I can go through this without having to look at all 400 and see what stocks are kind of starting to show up a little bit and move, pop a little bit. And so I know I've got weekly low ADX, and I'm looking for this big green bar. Okay, so now this is going to go into a watch list. I might put it in my favorites list. That's this little check mark, or this little star here. I just click on that and it would go into the favorites list. But at that point, then I'm going to start stalking it over the course of the next, the next week or two. It's just going to stay in the list. Now, this list could get too big, so you have to continue to prune it. Like if we got big green bar here and then a big red bar the next day, or a gap down the next day or something like that, then I would just uncheck this. So it would be green and I would just take it off. And so you want to make sure you're staying on top of this list. But you've got a low ADX pattern, and then I can just start browsing through and looking at breakout patterns. Look at this. This is a stock that I have been putting out in my on my subscription for Rabil Stock Research, and look at the breakout that's taking place. Now, if you were watching this in advance and you had an alarm in, you would have definitely wanted to take this breakout coming up through 12. Based on the weekly, if you look at a monthly, weekly, it was a really good setup. But if you see it now showing up like this, and you just put it in the favorites list, and now you start stalking it and see if you get a pullback back towards 12. Or maybe just a pause pattern, or look for one of my setups off of this pattern. Now, if you notice, this was the 2 time frame pattern, pulling back to the 18-month that is now rising for the first time in a while. And now we had the opposing trend trigger, and we're getting a definitive trigger to the upside now on a breakout. So we want to go through this list like this and see, this one doesn't really appeal to me. Even though we're getting a big green bar, it's not really set up yet. And then we look at Cleveland Cliffs. We can see, pretty good action there. We keep browsing through. Look at US Steel. Look at this popping off the 18-month line. Look at this opposing trend pattern. And now we're starting to see the daily start to kick in. Yeah, put this in the favorites list and start to stalk it. Look at STLD, another steel stock. Steel Dynamics, nice looking pattern, bouncing off the 18-month. Look at this relative strength line rallying here. We've got a zero line reversal developing on the weekly chart. So we want to look for some kind of a pullback here. This is really fresh, new action that's just happened in the last few days. So you want to browse that way and start to look for stocks that are appealing to you. If we go back and look at what the next step could be, is you could look for patterns that on the higher time frame. So I'm talking about like on a weekly chart, have a rising 18 and a rising 40. Okay, that would be priority number 1. And you can look at every single stock, and you could do like RSI 5 is less than 50 to make sure it's not overbought, and just do rising 18, rising 4. So 18 is above the 40, both lines rising, and then do RSI 5 is under 50, and then go look for patterns that are actually showing some kind of an opposing trend where the 18 is below the 40. You could put the 18, so you could do weekly, so you can do this in TC, where you can do both time frames. 18 above the 40 and both lines rising here, and then just do 18 below the 40 and price below the 40 on the lower time frame daily. So that's another way you could do that. I'm not going to actually show you the results of any kind of screen or anything like that, but that is something you could look for. And then the last thing you could do is use ADX, and on the higher time frame, look for ADX that is strong and above 25, And on the lower time frame, look for ADX that's below 25. So what we'll have is a power trend in place, a really strong trend on the higher time frame, and in the lower time frame, you're going through some kind of a consolidation pattern. And if we get those two combined, that's really not a bad thing. Now, the more strict you make a screen, the fewer stocks are going to pass, and it saves you time, but you're going to miss stocks. Okay, and then if you have a looser screen, if you have a lot of stocks passing, like I showed the 400, you're not going to necessarily miss anything, but it's going to take you a lot more time. So you have to find what fits in your schedule and see what works. I mean, I go through a lot of stocks and a lot of screens. I have time. This is what I do. So you want to make that, you have to cover that question for you and figure out what works. But these are 3 different ways I think you can go about looking for screens. Now, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're starting to show some wide range bar breakouts showing up. And but this has been a difficult year. If you start from late last year through this period right now, we're not getting as many. We're still finding some, but not to the degree that we were finding for about 6 or 7 months last year in the middle of the year when we had really good condition in the market. So you have to take that into account. And if you're going to be looking through stocks and trying to find patterns that look attractive, look at the TAP, finding support at the 18-month line, and now we're getting the opposing trend set up with a big green bar crossing back up through the 18. So these might pass a couple of times. Then you have to start watching them. And again, just put them in a favorites list and then start watching. So you take the screen and then create a watch list from the screen. It's not like you're going to have a screen where you're going to immediately go and buy the stock. I wouldn't do it that way. I would use the screen to create a watch list and then use the watch list as your daily. You browse through those. Hopefully it's only anywhere from 20 stocks to 30 stocks, maybe 40 at the most, and then browse through those every day and see if anything's happening. And if you have to put an alarm in, do that, and then look for the patterns that I talk about, the low ADX breakouts or the pullback plays, which are the 2 basic patterns that I talk about both in my book and on these videos. So that would be my suggestion to you, is to go about doing that. I hope this helps answer a lot of the questions I've been getting about the screens. We do plan on doing this for this channel. So stay tuned for that. And as I get more information from my partner on this, I will definitely tell you more. All right. Go ahead and post any questions or comments, and we'll see you next time.